Okay, let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer where we're going to unpack the profound and frankly amazing cognitive and spiritual art of creative writing. We'll be doing this by comparing Western mechanics with Indian knowledge systems. Whether you're penning a novel, crafting poetry, or you're just fascinated by the sheer power of human imagination, understanding how we literally build worlds with words is an incredible journey. Today, we're looking at this craft not just as a rigid set of rules, but as this beautiful intersection between rigorous psychological frameworks and ancient transcendental philosophies. Here is our roadmap. We're going to start with the magic of creation, move into the Western creative process, and then explore Indian poetics and creativity. After that, we'll look at the psychology of rasa, dive into ancient Indian narrative genres, and finally, wrap up by synthesizing East and West. Section 1, The Magic of Creation. Let's explore what it truly means to create something out of absolutely nothing. So, the crucial point here is that creation, well, it isn't actually magic. You aren't just pulling something out of thin air. Instead, it's a highly developed cognitive skill where you break traditional paradigms. You are molding your own existing experiences, your deep thoughts, and your memories to establish a completely new perspective. Think about it. In academic or technical writing, language is basically just a transparent vehicle used to deliver facts. But in creative writing, language itself becomes the destination. The rhythm, the word choices, the hidden meanings, they all work together to elevate the text into a living, breathing, organic art form. Section 2, The Western Creative Process. Now that we've defined creation, let's map out the mechanical journey of an idea. Graham Wallace actually created a widely accepted four-stage psychological model for this, and it's brilliantly structured. First up, we have preparation. This is that highly conscious, laborious stage where you, as a writer, gather raw material through observation and research. Second is incubation. This is fascinating. It's when you consciously stop thinking about the project. Your subconscious mind takes over, letting all those contradictory thoughts just ferment and collide. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, hits stage 3, illumination. That famous eureka moment where the idea suddenly crystallizes into your conscious mind. But a writer's job definitely isn't done there. Stage 4 is verification and revision. This is where the strict discipline of craft comes in, editing, pruning, and refining that raw inspiration into a robust narrative structure. Fueling those four stages are three absolutely vital pillars. Without these, writing just remains a mechanical exercise. We start with imagination. And we're not just talking about daydreaming here. It's a powerful cognitive lens used to deconstruct reality and rebuild it, making the impossible seem vividly real. Then there's inspiration, the vital spark. It's that emotional impulse, maybe triggered by a random conversation, a memory, or a beautiful sunset, that compels you to start writing. Finally, we have originality. Now, originality doesn't mean finding a topic literally no one has ever touched before, because human conflicts are remarkably universal, right? True originality is simply your honest, authentic voice applied to those universal themes. E.M. Forster made a famous distinction that perfectly highlights the Western focus on causality, conflict, and the mechanics of a narrative arc. He noted that the king died and then the queen died is merely a story, but the king died and then the queen died of grief is a plot. A plot requires cause and effect. It demands conflict, whether that's internal or against society. That conflict builds tension in a rising action, hits a decisive climax, and then settles into a resolution. So in the Western framework, the writer is very much acting as an architect of conflict. But what happens if we shift our perspective? What if we view the writer not just as an architect of conflict, but as a cosmic deity? Let's get into Section 3, Indian Poetics and Creativity. In ancient Indian poetics, known as Kavya Shastra, the poet is actually elevated to the status of a Prajapati, meaning a creator or a Brahma. The writer isn't just holding a mirror up to society. Through their innate genius, they wield the absolute freedom to construct an entire parallel universe, one that can be entirely more beautiful, just, and blissful than our own harsh reality. It's a profoundly spiritual yet worldly pursuit aimed at the holistic betterment of the reader. To achieve this divine level of creation, ancient Indian scholars identified three kavya hetu, which are the fundamental causes of poetry. First is pratibha. This is that innate, almost supernatural genius that allows someone to create unprecedented things. But raw genius isn't enough on its own. It has to be paired with vyutpati, which is deep, sweeping scholarship of grammar, history, the arts, and human behavior. And finally, abhasa, relentless, continuous writing practice. It is just a beautiful balance of internal mystical awakening and incredibly rigorous external discipline. Let's pause for a second and compare how these frameworks diverge and actually complement each other. While the West often emphasizes self-expression, catharsis, and the mechanics of tragedy and conflict, the Indian perspective is deeply oriented toward public welfare and the ultimate evocation of ascetic bliss, or rasa. The Western writer is seen as a thinker and drafter. The Indian writer is viewed as a visionary sage wielding supernatural intellect. And this brings us to the very heartbeat of Indian literary aesthetics. Section 4. The Psychology of Rasa. The ultimate supreme goal of a writer in the Indian tradition is to evoke rasa. Think of it as a savoring, a distinct aesthetic joy or flavor. The theory dictates that certain permanent emotions, like love, sorrow, or fear, exist in a dormant state inside every single reader. The writer's job is to masterfully blend characters, physical gestures, and fleeting psychological states to awaken those dormant feelings. When it's done perfectly, the reader actually forgets their own personal identity. They experience a state of universalization, becoming completely one with the narrative. Indian literature recognizes exactly 9 of these fundamental rasas. This Navarasa ranges from Shringara, which is love, to the comic, pothos, furious, heroic, terrible, odious, marvelous, and finally, the peaceful. The ultimate challenge for any creative writer is to seamlessly weave these distinct emotional flavors through their words, giving the audience an experience so profound it borders on actual spiritual bliss. Alongside rasa, we have another crown jewel of Indian aesthetics, the Dvani theory, established by Anandavardhana. Dvani translates to suggestion. This theory boldly declares that if you state something directly, you are just delivering information. True, superior poetry relies heavily on suggestion, symbols, and hints. The meaning should echo far beyond the literal words on the page. It's the absolute art of letting multiple, subtle layers of meaning naturally unfold in the reader's own mind. So, how are these profound aesthetics practically applied in ancient cultural and narrative structures? That brings us to Section 5, Ancient Indian Narrative Genres. The storytelling foundation in India was primarily laid by 2 massive categories of literature. First, Shruti, which means that which is heard. These are divinely revealed cosmic truths, like the Vedas, packed with breathtaking, imaginative metaphors of nature. Then we have Smriti, that which is remembered. These are the human author texts, like the grand epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. What's incredible about Smriti literature is its narrative craft. It uses complex, nested storytelling, literally stories within stories, to translate high philosophy into gripping, accessible epics for the general public. And when it came to ancient prose, Indian scholars were incredibly structured. It evolved into 2 highly refined literary crafts. On one hand, you have the kata. This is entirely fictional. It offers the writer total imaginative freedom to prioritize aesthetic joy, fantasy, and romance. On the other hand, you have the akyayika. This is heavily disciplined, historically based prose. It often uses a first-person perspective and enforces strict structural rules, like mandatory poetic meters at the beginning of every chapter just to hint at what's coming next. It really shows just how consciously they approached the mechanics of storytelling. Now, how do we bring these 2 monumental frameworks together for the modern writer? Section 6. Synthesizing East and West. By synthesizing the 2, modern writers are handed an incredible toolkit. Just imagine mastering the rigorous psychological drafting stages and the causality-driven conflict of the West while simultaneously infusing your work with the deep, evocative soul of the East. You aren't just plotting a timeline of events anymore. You're using the subtle suggestion of Dwani to awaken the dormant rasa within your reader. You're offering them both a gripping story and a profound, blissful aesthetic experience. It roots the work in deep cultural heritage while giving it massive, universal appeal. We've seen how the art of writing bridges psychological stages and ancient spiritual goals. We've explored the drafting process and the divine role of the poet. It takes deep worldly scholarship, relentless practice, and an authentic voice to weave all these concepts together. So, armed with the rigorous mechanics of the West and the profound soul of the East, I leave you with one final, essential thought to consider for your own creative journey. What kind of universe will you create?